I'm Dusty, and welcome back to my lab. Today, I want to talk a little bit about simulations. So, what is a simulation? Let's hear what Miriam has to say. The act or process of simulating. Not terribly useful. The second, a sham object or counterfeit. That'll be important. 3. First definition. The imitative representation of the functioning of one system or process by means of the functioning of another. A computer simulation of an industrial process. B. Examination of a problem often not subject to direct experimentation by means of a simulating device. Okay, not terribly useful, that one. Now, let me see if I can boil this down a little bit better. Now, what is a simulation? I think that one of the most important aspects of a simulation is this concept of simplification. This counterfeitedness is important, especially intuitively, especially the way that we speak about it. And when we think about the word, I think that it has this baked into it, that for some reason that a simulation is a lesser or lower stakes. I think it is important to think about situation than its original predecessor, what it's based off of, right? So why is this important? Well, simulation theory is thus essentially the idea uses statistical and probabilistic concepts to think that because we as human beings have the intellect to create mimicked or simulated environments in the form of computers, and that there's no reason to believe, especially physically speaking, that we couldn't make very convincing ones in the future, that chances are strong that we ourselves are living inside of a simulated environment. Now, what is the drive behind this, and what is it meant to enlighten us to? I mean, I think that's an important question, and I think that oftentimes it's not really answered. I mean, when we think about what the word simulation evokes, when we talk about it or speak it, right? Again, I think that it evokes this idea of lesserness or simplification or lower stakes. Okay, and I think that that's a problem, and I'll explain why. So, in order to talk about why I think that simulations are necessary and even preferable, in some sense to the most fundamental reality, we need to think about what the most fundamental reality might look like. And how will we do that? Well, in my other video, I talk about the annihilation argument and the concept of true nothingness, and really the idea that even space itself has attributes and has somethingness to it. So, when we truly think about nothingness, I think that the idea of time gets confusing. We want to think of, the Big Bang and before the Big Bang, whatever that means. Like, if we're in a simulated environment, then, there would have been a Big Bang for their universe, and what if they were simulated, which realistically, simulation theory would apply for every single universe that ever existed, because statistically speaking, it would make more sense that you would be living in the simulation, right? So what would be the most primary or beginning, quote unquote, trying to avoid using time words, state? Well, I think that the most fundamental state would be that of true nothingness, devoid of space and therefore also time. Because space is time. There is no time constant. There's only spatial constants, such as quarks and material objects that we can observe and measure, and then also energy constants, such as the speed of light. Now, if there was truly nothing, truly no space, no time, no material objects, which we have this human intuitive ability to, or idea that would be beforeness, okay? But okay, we'll think about beforeness, okay? But really, the driving factor is the fact that it's simple. It's simpler, right? It's simpler than what we have now. We have complexity, right? So this whole aspect of complexity and time is interesting, and we don't necessarily, tie them together as humans, but, sometimes in time, things can get more complex. Sometimes they get more simple. It all depends. But what we can think is that the first thing that would ever exist in true nothingness would be one single point, right? I mean, I can only speculate, but the simplest thing that I can think of is a point. But the weird thing about a point is that there are infinitely many points within the point. And so I think that truly, we might really just eventually end up with tons and tons and tons of points with no rules. And the points just float around and are incredibly chaotic. So I think that immediately after nothingness, because of the act of simplicity, we would have a truly complex web of meaningless random dots, or points, and there would be no consciousness or experience, involved with that. I don't think. I mean, perhaps, but I'll explain why I don't think it would be preferable or meaningful necessarily. Think about a game. Think about when you play a card game or a video game. The rules have to be the same, for every player, or at least over time as well, because if they're not, then the game is spoiled and it's no more fun, right? If every time you try to shoot your gun in Halo, it either doesn't fire or shoots, water or something like that, and the other guys are shooting bullets, but they don't know when it's going to change for them either. It can be fun for a little while, but it gets tedious and annoying, right? Well, I think that really, this is just how everything works. Eventually we just start making rules. Like here, now the points are connected. Now they're interacting. In a way that is agreed upon and has a rule base, and that would be the next level of complexity. Now the thing is that this would lead to eventually, some rules, and maybe in an evolutionary way, if you want to think about it in a Darwinian sense, it's just certain universes exist because they're worth existing and experiencing, and others don't. This is going to get speculative, but the idea is this, okay? If we had this incredibly chaotic and realistically very complex, because of the interactions are almost meaningless and have no set rules, then it might be, in some sense realer or prior or primary to our simulated reality, but is it as meaningful? I would argue it's not, in the same way that a game that's random isn't meaningful. And so the point is, yeah, we're probably in a simulation. There are rules. It's simplified from an extremely chaotic, situation. But is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think that that's the point. I think that, the time is now on everything, like Wale says. There's my point of view, what I choose to attend to, and everything else that I used to or will in the future. And that's what I think. I don't know. I'm really curious to see what people think about this. This is how I think of simulations and simulation theory. Drop me a comment, like my video, and subscribe. Thanks.